summer, we worked at the ILIF laboratory studying cystic fibrosis, and I'm actually going to be talking about airway epithelia physiology, and Franny's going to be talking about genetic mutations.
We'll be doing 2 back-to-back talks, so I'll be stepping aside while Gopika does her talk. Please save all your questions until the end. Thank you.
All right, so this summer I focused on the defective response to prostaglandin E2 in cystic fibrosis. So I actually want to start off with some airway epithelia physiology first. And so the epithelial cells coat the inner lining of our lungs. And this is an example of a singular epithelial cell. And as you can notice, on the apical membrane, we have this protein called cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator. And this protein is really important in being able to transport chloride and bicarbonate from inside the cell to out of the cell. And when that happens, water is able to follow the movement of these ions, and we create this really hydrated mucus layer right here. And this is really important in flushing out any bacteria or toxins that actually enter the lungs. In the case of cystic fibrosis, this mechanism is actually not functional due to a problem in this protein. So you're not getting enough chloride and bicarbonate leaving the cell. What ends up happening is you get a very acidic, dehydrated mucus layer, and that presents as a host of issues all across different organs in the body. So you have issues in the lungs, you have pancreatic insufficiencies, and other digestive problems. My project specifically was focused on prostaglandins E2, or PGE2. PGE2 is known to be an inflammatory mediator, and it's produced by epithelial cells as well as inflammatory cells. And recently it's been found that it increases chloride secretion in duodenal cells and pharyngotrachea. And if you study bronchial epithelial cells, PGE2 was found to increase chloride secretion in cells that had functional CFTR, but not in cells that did not have functional CFTR. So we think that it may work through some sort of CFTR-dependent mechanism. What you can notice here, there are 2 receptors, EP4 and EP3, that's what they're called. And we think that PGE2 is responsible for interacting with either one of these receptors, we're not entirely sure which, and then causing a cascade within the cell, leading to increased chloride secretion. So a little bit more into the pathways themselves. The EP4 pathway is involved in increasing cyclic AMP, activating PKA, and increasing phosphorylation and activation of CFTR. So chloride is moved out through this transporter. And EP3 has been known to increase calcium output from the endoplasmic reticulum and increasing movement through a calcium-dependent chloride channel, so a different channel than CFTR. And finally, EP4 has been known to have a level of crosstalk, so it's actually able to interact with this other channel by increasing calcium as well and moving chloride throughout this transporter. So the objectives of my study were to actually figure out which of the 2 receptors is most involved in PGE2 signaling in bronchial epithelial cells, and then to understand the involvement of those other cell players such as cyclic AMP and calcium signaling in this entire mechanism. So the first set of results, before that I want to go to methods, we did epithelial cell culture and electrophysiology. So as you can see right here, this is a cell culture insert. We grew monolayers of cells on these cell culture inserts. The ones I used were known for being a model for cystic fibrosis in bronchial epithelial cells, and I used their corrected CFTR version in order to be able to trace signaling pathways within the cell. And then we use electrophysiology to actually quantify ion transport in these cells. As you can see, this is called an Using chamber, and we'll put these cell inserts vertically into this space right here, and we're able to add compounds selectively to one side or the other and measure changes in short circuit current. And what this does is it allows us to look at how ions are transported across the membrane. All right, so the first set of experiments that were run were to look at the impact of blocking PKA. So I mentioned PKA is part of the EP4 pathway, and we blocked it using something known as H89. As you can see in these graphs, we're measuring short circuit current over time. So an increase in short circuit current indicates chloride stimulation moving out of the cell, and a decrease indicates blockage. So as you can see, when we pre-treated with H89, there was a large inhibition of that stimulatory effect. In fact, it was about 74%. The next goal was to see if perhaps that calcium-based channel was involved in any way. So we blocked it using something known as BAFTA-AM. What that does is it chelates calcium within the cell so that there's no more that's available to interact with that other calcium-dependent chloride channel. And again, this had a 34% inhibition. So while not as big as the other one, it still definitely did contribute to chloride secretion. And then finally, we wanted to see if that difference with the calcium was due to that crosstalk that I had mentioned earlier. So we were actually able to block the molecule involved with something known as wort-mannan, and doing that inhibited PG2 stimulated chloride secretion by 56%. So it seems to indicate that the two pathways that EP4 is using is primarily involved in increasing chloride secretion. So now that we looked at signaling pathways, the next goal is to actually look at the receptors themselves. And in order to do that, we used compounds known as agonists. Agonists are essentially things that would increase activity of whatever receptor it was used for. So first, we showed PG2 almost like a control. This is what we would expect to see when PG2 stimulates chloride. When we were able to use an agonist for EP4, we saw a very similar characteristic spike in chloride secretion that you see with PG2, whereas when we used an EP3 agonist, there was very minimal, if any, chloride secretion at all. So overall, by looking at both receptors and intracellular signaling, we were able to see that PG2 probably works through an EP4-based mechanism and activates these two pathways in order to increase chloride secretion within the cell. And so this is relevant because when you look at like the immune system and how that interacts with the different mediators, when you get infection and inflammation in the lungs, what tends to happen is these immune mediators such as PG2 are produced in abundance, and they're able to increase chloride secretion and really flush those toxins out of our lungs before they start degrading our cells. In the case of cystic fibrosis, that whole mechanism right here isn't functioning as well. So when bacteria and toxins get trapped here, they're then able to actually degrade the cells and cause a lot of damage. So I'm actually going to hand it over to Franny now to talk more about the genetic side of cystic fibrosis.
Okay, so my project was focused on personalized medicine and rare cystic fibrosis mutations. So above is a diagram of the CFTR DNA. CFTR has 27 exons, which are the coding regions of DNA, and they're represented in the rectangles of this diagram. It also has 26 introns, which are the non-coding regions of DNA, which are represented in the lines in this diagram. So when the DNA is processed into RNA and then into protein, the exons are the only thing that are expressed, so any given mutation that occurs in the DNA will then be translated into target some region of the CFTR protein. So currently there are approximately 70,000 people with CF worldwide, and out of all of these people, there are 2,019 mutations that are currently annotated in the CF Sick Kids database, 281 of which are known to cause disease. The most common CF mutation is known as F508del, and this affects approximately 90% of CF patients. The F508del mutation occurs in exon 11 of the CFTR DNA, which causes a deletion of phenylalanine at position amino acid 508. And this leads to causes the protein to misfold in the endoplasmic reticulum and degrade before reaching the cell membrane. So recently, they've been coming out with what are called CFTR modulators, which target the underlying defect in the CFTR mutation. So VX770 is called a CFTR potentiator, and as you can see in this diagram, what a potentiator does is it opens the defective CFTR channel when the protein is on the membrane, and this allows for more chloride and bicarbonate to pass through. VX809 and VX661 are known as CFTR correctors, and these correctors target the defect of the F508del mutation by aiding in the folding when it's in the endoplasmic reticulum and allowing for an increase of CFTR to reach the cell membrane. So currently, VX770, which is now called Kalydeco, is approved for use by CF patients. It was approved in January of 2012, and it's currently approved for 33 different CF patients mutations as of May 2017. Orkambi, which is a combination of the corrector VX809 and VX770, was first approved in 2015 and is currently approved for people who are homozygous for the F508del mutation. And then lastly, the corrector VX661 and VX770 combination is currently in phase 2 clinical trials for patients who are heterozygous for the F508 del mutation and another CF mutation. So the objective of my project is to test these CFTR modulators on rare mutations in vitro, because CF patients who have rare genotypes struggle to get into clinical trials like the one I just discussed, because there are not enough patients with these same mutations. So therefore, it's really important to test their cells and see if they do in fact respond to these CFTR modulators so that no CF patient is left behind. So the first part of my experiment was to better understand the relationship between the CFTR modulators' effects on CF cells, and I did that by using the cell line CFPE41O- that Gopika also talked about. This cell line is homozygous for the F508 del mutation, which again affects exon 11 of the CFTR DNA, and then translates into affecting the nucleotide binding domain 1 of the CFTR protein. So the results for this, so these diagrams, they show change in chloride current over time. This bar represents one microamp change in chloride current. So and then the first thing that was added in these experiments was forskolin, which increases the cyclic AMP level in the cell, which then activates CFTR, which causes an increase in chloride secretion. And then the next thing that was added was the CFTR potentiator. Was added acutely in the boosting assay, and that is also hopefully increases chloride current. And then lastly, CFTR inhibitor which causes the blockage of chloride current. So as you can see, in the cells that were pre-treated with the correctors VX809 and VX661, there was a larger change in chloride current from before anything was added to after the VX770 potentiator was added. In fact, in both of these different pre-treated cells, the change in chloride current was approximately 2.5 to 3 microamps. And this is important because 3 microamps is considered the level that may show, if the CF patient was to take these modulators clinically, there may be a therapeutic response given this change in chloride current. So the second half of my experiment was to test cells that had a rare genotype. So the genotype that I tested were cells heterozygous for the F508 del mutation and C850 dupe A. C850 dupe A is so rare that it is not currently annotated in the Sick Kids database, and there's currently only one patient that known that has this mutation. C850 dupe A occurs in exon 6 of the CFTR DNA, which then translates into occurring in the transmembrane spanning region of the CFTR protein. We believe that this mutation leads to a premature stop codon, which causes the protein to be truncated and possibly non-functional. So the way that these cells were cultured was using a process called conditional reprogramming. And this process is also known as patient in a dish model because the epithelial cells are allowed to fully differentiate and accurately express the specific epithelial cells that are in the given patient. The conditionally reprogramming method also greatly expands the number of cells for testing. As you can see, the CRC cultures create, from one cell, they produce about up to 16 million cells, as opposed to only 512 cells. So the way that this process works is nasal epithelial cells were obtained from the patient via nasal brushing. These cells were then co-cultured with irradiated 3T3 fibroblasts for 7 days in growth medium that contains Rho kinase inhibitor. Afterward, they were trypsinized, and the epithelial cells were allowed to grow and expand and differentiate for up to 21 to 28 days. And then when the conditionally reprogrammed cells were ready, they were experimented on using the boosting assay. Okay, so the results for this experiment, again, this bar represents 1 microamp change of chloride current over time. So as you can see, this is really good news. There was the cells that were not treated and the cells that were treated with the CFTR correctors all showed some sort of response. However, in the pre-treated correctors 809 and 661, there was a slightly increased response from before anything was added to after the VX770 was added, as compared to the cells that were not treated with anything. And this change is approximately a 2.5 to 3 microamp change, as you can. There was a bar graph, I don't know where it was. But this 2.5 to 3 microamp change again shows that this patient may respond clinically to either one of these modulators. So in conclusion, this patient with a rare genotype may respond to Orkambi, which is the combination of VX809 and VX770, or the other combination, which is VX661, VX770. And this just shows how important it is to test these responses in vitro, because as you can see, this patient does have a possibility of responding. And so no one should be left behind just because they have a rare genotype. Okay, so thank you. And thank you to Dr. Ilek, who was so helpful in both of our projects, and to all of these other people who we could not have done our projects without. Here are both the conclusions and summaries from our experiments. We'll now open it up for questions for either one of those.
Well, I have a question. I'm the invisible man. This is more of a genetics question, but Delta 508 has been proposed to have a selective advantage. I think some for heterozygotes for bronchial asthma, and maybe homozygotes for surviving plague in historical Europe. Does it look like any of these other mutations might have some sort of selective advantage, or are they too rare to have any sort of data about that?
There's definitely a possibility for that, but it's especially given this specific mutation, since there's only one patient that we know that actually has it. There's really been no research on this mutation, so it's unclear. But there's always a possibility that the mutation itself or the combination of the two mutations could lead to some beneficial.
For most patients, is a dysfunctional CFTR the norm, or are there other kinds of processes that are impaired for other patients?
So it depends on the mutation, how the CFTR, like what the defect of the CFTR is. So for the F508, there's not very much residual CFTR function because the protein degrades before it reaches the membrane. However, for the mutations that the VX770 is most effective for, such as the G551D, which was the first mutation that it was approved for, the problem is just that the channel won't open, but the CFTR is already on that membrane. So it can really depend. So like for that one, there's like the CFTR does reach the membrane, and then the potentiator will help open the channel.
Question over here. So for CF patients who have abnormal CFTR, do they have normal PI3 kinase and intracellular calcium signaling? Is the other pathway normal?
So I think there needs to be a little bit more clinical data on that to be 100% sure, but I do believe that they do have normal PI3K activity. It's just that CFTR is so much more predominant as that main chloride and bicarbonate transporter that it becomes really essential in looking at how to improve function.